So this year in 2018, my wife and I met Ross Caligiuri. Also, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. At Phoenix Comic Con at his booth. And my wife isn't much of a reader, but he still pitched his book to her. And it caught her interest as well as mine. She mentioned to him offhand that I often read to her since I tend to do voices for characters. He seemed to be very interested in the idea, so here we are. Without further ado, let's read together. Dreaming in the Shadows by Ross Caligiuri. Chapter 1. As her feet beat the concrete ground beneath them, her chest began to ache. It had been a long time since she had run at full sprint. She was, quite literally, running for her life, and leaving everything she had known before behind. Regardless of her past experiences, here she was, blindly following a girl who was virtually a stranger, because she had promised to lead Eleanor to safety. The two girls continued to move at full speed, and Eleanor thought about the note she had left on the kitchen counter for the man she had loved and shared a life with over the past 3 years, Darren. Saying goodbye to his face would have been too emotional for her. She knew he would have begged her to stay or come with her, and neither of those things were an option. Eleanor had scribbled out the letter for Darren in the early morning hours, while he slept in their warm bed. He remained sleeping until their house filled with the sound from the old speakers that hung in every room. Mandatory laws demanded that every home be wired to receive daily, city-wide morning announcements from their leader, Dr. Sakura. His voice infiltrated the entire sector as he spoke from his office, located on the top floor of Obsidia, the main building in the center of Constance. Eleanor had secretly removed the letter from her pocket and placed it discreetly onto the counter before the two of them left their small house to start their days. For Darren, the day had begun just as any other. For Eleanor, it signaled the end of the life she had grown to know. Her vision was flooded with the recent memory of her mother's trembling lips and her father's tightened shoulders. Her parents had stood at the front door of their house as they watched their daughter begin to walk away for the last time. Her younger brother, Will, fumbled for words that his developing mind could not yet form. The necklace that hung down past her collarbone hit against her skin with every step she took. Her father had given it to her as he said his final goodbye, and had informed her that the pendant originally belonged to an estranged older sister that Eleanor never knew existed. Her father had turned his face away before she could plead for more answers. Representing an older sister that her father had implied suffered through a similar isolated fate, the necklace brought comfort of the unknown to Eleanor, and she left her family behind, moments before she met the strange girl that now guided her towards her new future. The city sector of Errant, where she had spent her whole life, looked much different to Eleanor as she dashed through the back alleys. From the main streets, on the other side of the tall buildings, the everyday bustlings of the citizens were in full effect. Their daily routines had always turned a blind eye to the reality of the situation like Eleanor was in. At this moment, most people, trapped inside the high concrete walls of the sector, were starting their work break. They were finding a nice place to sit and eat their lunches. It was necessary to seek shelter from the dust that was constantly emitted from the labor building that Eleanor's sector was known for. If you had the skills and income in Errant, it was easy to run a small business. Unfortunately, most of the inhabitants there were destined to work their lives away, stuck inside the gloomy factory. Some of the athletic types could apply to work for the agency. They were promised a life of luxury and, in some cases, even travel. The applicants that left the walls of Errant, however, never came back. As she said her goodbyes, members of the agency had shown up at Eleanor's parents' house looking for her. They demanded that her parents turn her over to them. Her father had blocked the doorway, allowing time for Eleanor to escape. Eleanor ran as fast as she could, but the agents were quickly closing in on her. Thinking fast, she sidestepped into an alleyway between two buildings, attempting to throw them off her trail. Suddenly, a hand reached out and covered Eleanor's mouth. She screamed, and the noise was muffled by the stranger's hand. Before Eleanor could fight off her attacker, a soft voice spoke out to her.
You need to come with me if you want to survive.
The girl didn't wait for an answer and immediately set off running. Eleanor weighed her options, and in a split second decided it was better to follow the strange girl. She had a feeling in her gut that it was the right move to make. She hoped that wherever this girl was leading her would provide her with more answers to the wildly confusing situation she found herself in. Eleanor's only clue about her new world came from her parents. She had an older sister that had suffered the same detached existence that Eleanor was now faced with. The reason her parents had kept such a secret was unknown to her. Eleanor had heard talk of the rebellion that existed inside the city of Constance before. Most of the information she gathered was considered an old fairy tale by the general public. There were a few stories here and there about people angered by their present living conditions, who had demanded that the center of Constance be held responsible for it. However, information was never passed between the 5 sectors that formed the entire city. Over the years, the tales of the rebellion had become children's bedtime stories, and people did not take them seriously. The unfamiliar girl who guided her path seemed at ease, as if the concept of escaping the agency was nothing new to her. Eleanor wondered how long the girl had been a part of the rebellion. Considering the excellent physical condition the girl was in, and her impressive stamina, it seemed she had been involved for quite some time. No one in Errant lived a life physically demanding enough to need to run for that amount of time. No one that wasn't set on becoming an agent, at least. Eleanor's arms and legs began to burn, and she desperately wanted a moment to catch her breath. The alleyways and buildings of Errant sped past her vision. She had lived her whole life inside of this sector, but she no longer had her bearings about her, and couldn't even make an educated guess as to what her location was. The girl turned around, and after noticing the fact that Eleanor was losing steam, said,
Why don't we take a break here for a second?
Yeah, sure, if you think it's safe enough, Eleanor responded, trying to seem nonchalant, even though she was incredibly relieved at the suggestion. Eleanor slumped against the wall of one of Errant's gray brick buildings. They were in an alley, still hidden from the main road. The girl walked over and pulled a jar of water out of her bag. Now that they had finally stopped, Eleanor had a chance to get a good look at the girl. She was slim, with long legs. Her dark tan skin was in stark contrast to her bright green eyes. Tight, curled blonde hair hung down most of her back, held up by a thin string that worked its way across the top of her forehead.
Here, you should drink this.
The girl handed the jar of water to Eleanor. She tried her best to contain her ravenous thirst and accept the offering with grace.
Try and save some for later. We still have a long way to go. I can only assume that some of those agents will be making their way here soon enough.
The girl watched Eleanor as she took a drink that had lasted the entire time she spoke. Thank you. Eleanor managed to get out between gulps of water and gasps for air. Where are we headed, anyway?
For now, don't try and overthink things. We have everything set up for you. All you need to do is keep up with me.
The girl tried to smile encouragingly at Eleanor, but it came across as a sympathetic pity nonetheless. Those agents that showed up at my parents' house, what exactly do they want from me? Eleanor asked, her voice shaking.
They were there because of what you are. They were after me too, but that was for things that happened a while ago.
The girl replied. I've heard talk about people like me that have the same kind of dream, night after night, Eleanor said. They say it's some kind of warning signal. Does all this have anything to do with that? The girl looked her square in the eyes, and in a comforting voice replied,
Hold out a little longer, if you can. I promise you we'll get all the answers you need.
She placed her hand reassuringly on Eleanor's shoulder as she continued talking.
While we are resting here, you should know that the first step when you go into hiding will be to choose a new name for yourself. The life you left back there on your parents' front porch is gone. It's time to leave it behind for good. So what will it be?
Eleanor slouched further into the wall, taking a moment to think. Emotions washed over her again as she thought of her family and Darren. The thought of leaving them behind made it difficult to concentrate. She decided in order to remind herself of her past life, she needed to incorporate her past self within her new name.
Nora,
Eleanor announced. Saying it out loud was painful. She knew her old life was now completely gone, with those 2 syllables being said aloud.
I like it. It's very pretty. Nora. Okay then, Nora. We should get moving. 1 more long sprint and we should be at the wall. Think you can handle that?
The girl took off before she could respond. Nora scrambled to her feet and started to race after her.
Wait, you didn't tell me your name.
Nora called out. The girl made a sharp turn around a corner.
Phoenix.
The girl yelled back to Nora before she disappeared from view. Eleanor had secret. And we're gonna pause for a second here, 'cause I don't remember what voice I want to give this lady. We might set that on a completely different section. You need to come with me if you want to survive. The girl didn't wait for an answer and immediately set off running. Wow. Wow. The alleyways and buildings of Erin sped past her vision. Why don't we take a break here for a second? What happened to my voice? I suddenly went to a southern belle. Try and save some of that for... Wow! Ooh, wow! For now, don't try to... For now, don't try to overthink things. That's not the line. That's not the line. For now, don't try and overthink things. That's the line. She knew her old life was now completely gone, with those 2 syllables being... Whoa, that doesn't even sound close. Whoa. Whoa. Phoenix. 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 My name is Phoenix. A phoenix. I'm a phoenix. Phoenix.